thing.
Please do.
Yeah.
The broadcast is live.
Okay. Well, here we
Hey.
Here
are. All
we
together
are.
now. I don't know if we can actually sing that because it's probably copyrighted.
What are we singing?
A thing from the not copyrighted at all, people. Anyway, all together now.
Fenn's a lumberjack and she's okay. Oh wait, no.
What's happening? My audio messed up.
Oh.
Okay. So
I can hear. I think Michelle hears me.
yeah, I can hear Lonnie. I can hear me.
Whoa.
Fen, paging.
Something's
No.
happening.
This is why Weird Web Radio is recorded and not live.
Yeah. Well, I mean, sometimes the live is really fun for the level of like foobar that happens. Okay, Fen, breathe, just in case it's a paranormal problem and not a computer problem.
Try the mute button. Did you push it by accident?
Oh my God, I think I figured it out. Shh.
Nobody's gonna. Nope. Nobody's throwing any shit at you. Say hello to everyone and say why we're here.
Wait, hold on. Can you hear me?
This is like paranormal investigation. It'd be like,
yeah, can you hear me?
Just say red. Say red if you can hear me. Say red.
Not if you can hear us. Fen.
Okay, wait, I figured it out. It wasn't paranormal.
Fen, what do you mean? What do you mean empty? What do you
mean? In my brain.
Above? Wait, above. Okay.
I had you open in another window, so it was talking at the same time, and I was like,
oh no,
where are you? But I have, like 4,000 windows open, so
this is no bueno.
People were wondering, we're incredibly stressed. I think Lonnie's okay.
No,
we've all got
don't throw me in the okay bus.
All right.
I will not throw you to the orcas.
So now that I'm only hearing you one time and not what sounded like 36 times.
It's priceless though.
It's like,
no, your brain just like went.
There's not. It has been a long day. Okay, so for those of y'all who have in the audience who have done Kickstarters, holy shit. How did you do it?
How did you survive it? Like, yikes, this is a lot.
It's a lot, but we actually are doing really well.
Like good things. We got the project we love from Kickstarter.
We sure did.
The 30K mark, so we're almost 50% funded.
Yes, we are, and so Kickstarter does give you a lot of 30295. So it would be awesome if we could bump that up during this live stream. We got a bunch of literature from Kickstarter saying that like basically a lull in the middle of the campaign is normal, and we've been kind of like chilling in the 30-ish, 29-30 range. We'd love to get past that and move beyond the lull. But first, thank you so much to everyone who has pledged. And for those of you who don't know who we are or what we're doing, my name is Fen. I'm host of Follow the Woo podcast. I'm also a producer and a weirdo and a witch. And I am what did I miss? And we are creating these two shows. The most important thing, New Blood is the first one, and the second one is Inhuman Beings. One's an episodic ghost hunting show. I use the term ghost hunting loosely. It's more like
what people recognize. It's the more traditional. Yes. You go to a place that people say is haunted, and a bunch of folks who've got a number of tools, both technological, psychic, and otherwise, try to figure out what are people experiencing, what are they reporting, and what can we make of it with the tools that we have.
Exactly. Literally couldn't have said it better myself at this time with my brain capacity.
This is why I write the big books.
I write the big books. So the one is the episodic one, which explained beautifully. And then the other is a linear show. It's a docuseries where we go on kind of a wild ride into the realms of vampirism and then beyond.
It's a bold maneuver of documenting your own initiatory experience, like actually like a level of just raw, vulnerable, like an intimate look at several people trying to figure out, like, not just is there something out there, but what is in me.
Mm-hmm. I told people this past weekend, I'm part of an organization, international heathen organization called The Troth, and we're inclusive, so anyone's welcome. Unless you're a racist or a bigot, we'll boot you right back out the door. So that's right. And I was explaining to people this Kickstarter, and I thought that's kind of what was going on with one of these. And people looked at me weird, like, why would I watch that? And I said, well, if you could have a documentary series about someone encountering heathenry for the first time and their process of going, wow, this really speaks to me, and exploring that and going deeper into that path, would you watch it? And they're like, well, yes. I was like, wouldn't you like to see somebody else have that amazing spiritual awakening down a certain path? And they're like, I think you just sold it to me. So hopefully they've all jumped on the Kickstarter.
Well, yes, please. For me is with paranormal reality TV, it was actually the big criticism all of my like pagan, Wiccan, and like various magical practitioner friends had when I first got involved with Paranormal State. They were like, but we know spirits exist, because paranormal is you're looking outside of yourself and trying to find verification that stuff's out there. But what about those of us who have been on an internal journey of like, what is there in me? I'm a part of this, and I know I'm a part of this.
Yeah.
That mean?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think, and we're going to talk about Lonnie, who's here in just a minute, who was part of both shows actually, but much more involved in New Blood, that initiatory long form show.
That was a butt pucker moment, I gotta be honest.
That's how I sell it.
Yeah. That was a butt pucker. See that footage, folks. And another thing to note is that our entire cast and crew is queer. We're really, really proud of that. Even our editor and PA, like down to everybody.
Not it.
Lonnie's not. But
we have adopted as our
Lonnie, you have an honorable. You're a lesbian. Yeah.
I'm a lesbian.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm a man who. Who,
you know what?
How do we say it now? I don't know. I get this wrong all the time. Yeah. I'm cisgendered, and I like women. Don't make me say anything. Yeah. I'm just gonna fuck it up.
Ally is the better. Is the easiest thing. Like, I am supportive of everybody. Like,
yes.
I'm supportive of your
decision. I am 100% got your back, in your corner. Yeah. I see you. I hear you. I will listen, and I will punch somebody in the throat if they have to be. It has to be done. Yeah.
Well, I've seen it. I haven't. In front of me, at least.
Hope everybody doesn't mind the fact that this is very, very like unscripted, just us being silly.
Yes, definitely.
I mean,
but I do want to say, on the lesbian note. I work with a bunch of Gen Zs, and a lot of them are cisgendered males, and they love being called lesbian. It's like a new, like they want to be soft and gentle and like.
Okay, so the real thing is, like, Dr. Joseph Laycock has a book called Vampires Today, and it flies under the radar because it's about the vampire community, but what it's really about is identity in a sort of postmodern age where we have deconstructed and like reassessed. Basically, what I'm saying is we are Picasso, conceptually, where we have gone through the blue period and all the ones where like you learn the actual structure of how to make art that is seen as traditional. And then there's a point where you question all of it and you explode it and redesign it and reconfigure it. And we're at that point of reconfiguring everything. But some of the things that we're reconfiguring include identity, language, labels, how any of these are useful to us, and like just completely reusing or repurposing things that might have been slurs in the past or insults. Like really embracing a lot of change. It's a tumultuous time. It's very difficult to keep up with because it is something that's like a flashpoint. So if you're Lonnie and Mai's age, there's like words so much that you're like, okay, what's the word for me today? I'm not even sure.
Yeah.
I'm intersex, and I learned that word only because there was a very different word that is now considered a grievous insult. That is the word that I was diagnosed as 20 some years ago. So like, yeah, it's so weird. But anyway, we're in a
Yes.
place.
Well,
and let's talk about Lonnie.
Let's talk about stuff and things. So Cal, we're gonna hold on for 1 second.
Yeah.
Let's make sure everybody who's joining us knows who everybody is. So we'll come right back to that question, Cal. But yeah, Lonnie, do you want to give us a little lowdown of your background and who you is?
And who I is. That's right. I am Lonnie Scott. I'm the host of Weird Web Radio. It is a paranormal and occult podcast. Broadcasts on all platforms. I'm in my 7th season and had a lot of listeners. I hope you all become one. Other than that, like I mentioned earlier, I'm an important part of an inclusive heathen organization. We work internationally called the Troth. Some people pronounce it wrong. It's Troth because the way it's spelled. I currently occupy the position, in fact, newly elected as the High Steward, puts me in charge of the global ambassador, first contact, first point, kind of program that we have, working with the public.
That is a really big deal. So congratulations are in order.
Thank you so much.
That is great accolades, well deserved.
Thank you. And I was previously the Midwest Regional Steward and the Illinois Steward, so I've had my eye on this for a while. I also recently came to the culmination of a lot of very dedicated and hard work over the last few years in the Troth's clergy program and was ordained officially as clergy of the Troth by Diana Paxson at Trothmoot. So that was a wonderful experience too. And I can tell you, I mean, I've had a lot of different magical experiences and everything, but I'm saying when you're in a room, and it was me, Timothy Adams, and a fellow named Kurt, and we just had this wonderful shared experience together. And while we're standing there, there's a point where Diana in the ordination ritual asks everyone gathered at Trothmoot, so you're surrounded by all your fellow heathens that are there. And she says, everyone close your eyes and focus on these who are being ordained as clergy that you've accepted into the community, taking on this role, and send your blessings through the beings, the gods, the goddesses, the spirits that you work with individually. And I could feel them. I mean, the presence of it was immense, and it was a really, really cool experience. So yeah, I mean, that's a lot of what I do. I'm also a professional tarot and rune reader. I'm internationally award-winning tarot reader. I'm like Fen now. What am I forgetting?
There's always something.
I know, because I do so much different stuff. And a professional hypnotist, of course, which is why I'm here. I was the hypnotist on Hellier, season 2, episodes 7 and 9, I believe. They haven't shown all the experiments that I conducted on that show. I think they might over time as they continue their investigations. As a hypnotist, I generally focus on helping people stop smoking, deal with stress and anxiety, sports performance, that kind of things. My stress and anxiety clients are my absolute favorite, though, because if I find it the most rewarding work. I've been doing that for like 15 years now. I'm also a certified hypnosis instructor with the International Certification Board of Clinical Hypnotherapy, which every time I do one of these, I think they're going to throw me out for ethics.
really depends on the direction the Satanic Panic 2.0 ends up going.
Yeah, I mean, I remember before Hellier had ever been filmed, right? The Newkirks were doing this series Kickstarter kind of thing called Planet Weird, And they had gone around filming all kinds of different stuff. And Greg and I had gotten to a private conversation about, what are you going to do with aliens? And we got to talking about conducting this alien abduction experience that actually happened, was used in Hellier. But we had filmed that many years before for something else. Well, when I went through the hypnosis instructor course with Richard Nongard, he's probably the world's greatest hypnotist alive ever, certainly as a teacher. We're sitting in this class. It's me and everyone else going through this first class as instructors for the ICBCH in Las Vegas. And he says, you're all been invited here because you've offered something really unique to the world of hypnosis. And I just want to hear something that I don't know about what you've done with hypnosis. And who wants to go first? My hand went up first. And he's like, Lonnie, go ahead. And I said, well, once upon a time, I hypnotized a guy to believe he had been abducted by aliens so we could show false memories happen and on and on and on. And I explained it. And he was just looking at me and the whole class is looking at me. And then they kind of look at each other. Then they look back at me. And Richard goes, I think next we're going to talk about ethics.
Well, I mean, this is like the whole
yeah. So I mean, that's a real roundabout, chaotic way of telling you who I am. I just do a lot of stuff. I'm a heathen, and one of the core principles of being a heathen is do a lot of stuff to be remembered. I want my obituary to be this really cool flip book that takes a minute to get through.
You're on the track.
Song about you. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, just in case, because I know we have we're always getting new people in the live. Do you want to give just a little lowdown of who you are for those who don't know who you are?
I'm Michelle Belanger. You might know me from Paranormal State, Portals to Hell, Conjuring Kesha, a bunch of other things. If you don't recognize me, visualize me wearing a blindfold and walking around a darkened place, talking to spirits, and weirdly describing the decor that I cannot physically see. Work closely with Katrina Weidman and Heather Taddy, who were in Paranormal State with me on Katrina's Travel the Dead. And I am also a writer of many books and, one of the founding elders of the modern vampire community, which doesn't get trotted out a whole lot because most people are like, vampires? What are you talking about? But we are a magical community that sort of hived off of the witchcraft and occult communities in the 80s and 90s and have our own sort of thing and tradition, the rituals of which mostly I wrote. So that's the thing. You hear about the Wiccan Read. I'm the one that wrote the equivalent of that for the vampire community. Otherwise, you probably like my Dictionary of Demons. That's probably the thing that people know the most.
Yeah. That's your most popular book, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And I think because I managed to straddle, well, first of all, it was the one where I actually got to use my degree in comparative religious studies. And I was so excited because usually when you're writing mainstream mass market books, they're like a little bit less academia, please. But if you listen to me, I never really left academia behind. But I managed to straddle the folks who are really into I like to worship demons, the folks who are I like to fight demons, the folks who are I just like to write stories about demons. Everybody likes that book, and it's great.
You should buy it if you feel
it.
Honestly, I just think that's beautiful. My favorite one is I'll get it back here. I love it so much. The folks in Brazil did a translation, and it is just...
That's awesome.
Freaking gorgeous. They did it in black and red.
I want that.
There's so much art in here, the end paper. It's just so cool. If I wrote this book and I want to own it. What did you do? How did you do this? It looks so good. Anyway.
I want that.
I won't.
So I can give it to Fen.
It's got ribbons in it to mark your place. It's just such a fantastic. Yeah, look at that.
Amazing.
No, wow.
Yeah,
that's beautiful.
It's truly I was just this is a bucket. This is a bucket list thing I didn't even know I had. To see one of my books so lovingly put together.
That's something someone can find in 500 years in an attic and go, what did I find?
That's so cool. It's fun to think about stuff like that. We'll leave and what people will think.
I think about that all the time. I ask people on my show every once in a while, I'm like, what's your intention with all your like magical goodies? We all have them. I mean, I've got a horde of tarot decks, runes that I've made. I've got mandalas that I've made, all my books and statues. Like, what are you gonna do with all that? And who's gonna find it? You
I live
know?
about an hour away from the Buckland Museum of Witchcraft, so my arrangement is if folks in House Keperu, like, they get first dibs of anything that they want. I'm sure nobody's going to be able to take the 5,000 occult books that I've amassed, and anything that's left over. If the Museum of Witchcraft is still kicking around, I'm like, here you go.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I've wanted to go there. Okay, so we just bumped up a little bit. Thank you, whoever that was.
Every little bit helps.
Yes, it does. All right, so we are a chatty bunch, all three of us.
Yes.
Hello, we all have podcasts, so we love to talk.
And if you're listening right now, I donated $100 when this Kickstarter campaign kicked off. You have to match my donation if you're watching. That's the rule.
I don't make the
you don't make the rules. Lonnie does.
I make the rules? Oh, well, all right.
So let's just, before we're going to kick off back to Cal's question, I think we should start that. That's a great starter question. Yes, Lonnie, how does your experience with this show compare to Hellier and the journeys both crews are on?
Well, the way you ask that, how could I resist? First, on that show, Hellier was kind of weird in its own way, of course, in that, excuse me, I getting over a cold I caught in all my travels over the last week. So like I said, the first part, what you see me doing in Hellier wasn't filmed for Hellier. It was filmed back when I was thinner and had hair. So, and the second part, I drove down to this place. They had like an Airbnb by this big, beautiful river outside of Somerset, Kentucky. In fact, I liked Somerset, Kentucky, the environment around it so much. I took my family down there for a little family getaway a couple years, or last year before, and it's beautiful down there. So if you haven't been, I highly recommend it just for the environment. And there's where I hypnotized Carl and I hypnotized Connor. They haven't shown all the stuff with Connor yet. And it was in a big house. I was there real quickly overnight and kind of ushered out of the door in the morning because they just had a big film schedule and they were up to, they had to do what they had to do. This was a little different. I think you all had this really cool goal in mind. And I honestly, when I was working with the guys on Hellier, I didn't know what they were doing exactly. I really didn't. I had my own ideas. And, like I was in the room where they had some of their stuff. So I looked over and I saw the stack of books they were working on, and there's a lot of Crowley kind of stuff there. And I was just like, you guys are infested by Thelemites. Sorry, Marco, if you're watching. Anyway, so it was cool. I just felt like I was there to do a job and get out. I didn't feel like I was a big part of the project, right? I was just a kind of a cog in the wheel. With you guys for this project, for one, like Fen knows this. Fen is like family to me. I could not love another human being more like family. I mean, I felt like from the moment Fen and I talked for the first 10 minutes when I was going to be a guest on her show, I was like, I just found my sister that's been missing my whole life. So it already had that a major different feel anyway. And then, of course, we had all the mishaps, how we couldn't work out some of the travel arrangements and everything, but we still made it all happen where I could come in and help you guys do this exploration. I felt so welcome and such a big part of this. I knew what the purpose was and I knew what was going on overall. So that helped me feel even more part of the whole project. So like I said, if there's anything at all that I can do to help, I've absolutely got your backs because of any project I've helped people on, Hellier and otherwise. Like, you all have made me feel so immensely welcome and I love you for it.
Oh, we love you too, Lonnie.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, Thelemites is the kind of bug I want to be.
Well, look up Marco Visconti. Go check out stuff that
Mhm.
he does. I don't know anybody else to refer you to,
I
and
I've
Marco's
been getting
seems
on
like a pretty
Mark
good dude to
around.
me.
Yeah, no, he's been pretty. Some people have been weird, but like no, he seems pretty solid. The other person who practices Thelemite, the other Thelemite I know, who's really quite deep in it, like actually family tradition, is Elfie music.
Mhm.
Her father was an
Mm.
instructor, and her godfather, other father brother. It, it's weird when it's like her father's the person her father taught, who is also like a family friend who's almost another father figure. It, yeah. Anyway,
I
uh,
did time out real quick. I did get a note on a live stream ago about how some of the terminology we're using people didn't understand.
hmm,
So can we just,
that's fair.
Mm.
yeah, let's unpack that.
Okay, so
And I'll unpack anything I say that nobody understands. I'm
no,
always
yeah,
down for
and really, like again, like escapee from academia. Sometimes I will toss out words, and I think people are just like not bold enough to be like, what does it even mean?
it.
Um,
What?
Yeah.
so a fellow a long time ago in a galaxy not so far away, there was a fellow named Aleister Crowley who did a whole bunch of things. Crowley, depending on how you pronounce it, if you are a read not said person. He's a very flamboyant figure, sometimes an intentionally controversial figure. And he founded a couple of things, but the main one that people still practice, there's the Ordo Templi Orientalis, the OTO, that is passed along to him, but Thelema is his thing. It's a type of, I don't know, how would you typify it, Lonnie? It's ritual magic is a part of it, but it's
Hmm.
a little more complicated than that.
I'm
Uh,
probably not the best person to break it down because I have just the barest of rudimentary knowledge, just because coming up in it all this stuff in the early '90s, in my early teens, Crowley and Sylvia Brown and Scott Cunningham were about all you could find in a lot of bookstores.
yeah,
Um,
yeah, seriously.
I would describe Thelema as sort of definitely a ceremonial magical system with very specific rituals and purposes behind them and so on, a very structured kind of thing. But then there's also that part that's always sounded appealing. The whole "do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. Love is the law, love under will." That comes from Crowley's Book of the Law, which is supposed to be a book that was dictated, channeled through his wife in front of what they call the Stele of Revealing
Mm.
in Egypt. And
Yeah, there's a
he
lot of
wrote,
Egyptian or
yeah,
Egyptian stuff. Like there's a lot to unpack with it.
yeah.
Like some arguments about like, is it channeling? Is it a higher self? Is it the holy guardian angel? Is it an alien? And Crowley, like being who he was, would have been like, what do you think it is? And what is the
Hmm.
most what's the most sensational that's going to get me the most?
Mm.
Because he definitely had a showman aspect. Tony Moloch is the student of Elfie's father. He has a book. It's hard to get a hold of. It's like on Lulu and stuff, but it's The Life of the Sorcerer's Apprentice and Living with Magic in a Mundane World. And it is one of the best, like just grounded, very heartfelt things on like, this is what this path is and this is how this is, without any bull caca.
Mm.
For those of you who don't know
Yeah.
what caca is, that's a French word for
Get out of here. So yeah, and for to like, even that is kind of complicated what we just said, but I mean, I think in like layman's terms, he was a very well-known magical practitioner who was known for a lot of very unusual things, and then also very interesting things. But his rituals and weren't they known for being quite long? I mean, like years long.
there's
Yeah.
there's a lot of stuff that he did. So, oh God, like the whole bout. We could do like a whole thing on it. I think the
Hmm.
simplest way of boiling it down is that when we talk about magic and witchcraft, or just the sort of whole modern metaphysical movement, uh, for the longest time, Wiccan was the sort of like most widely palatable word people had for anybody who practiced any kind of magic. And it's so much more than that, and so much more complicated than that. It's sort of like saying that in Christianity, like all Christians are the same, as opposed to there's like all of these different things that have hived off of it. And that's not even assuming that there are multiple other religions that came out of the same scriptural source. So magic is a deep, wide, weird space that is as diverse as the people who practice it. And honestly, if you ask a practitioner of that stuff, you're going to hear a couple of different answers as well of like what it is and how it is. I know when I'm digging into stuff as a little junior little practitioner, Alistair's stuff is the great beast. It was the darkety dark edgelord stuff. Like it was, he worked with the Goetia, like he summoned demons. It was the cool dark stuff. Especially during the Satanic Panic, where it was like everything else had been just fluffified. So you either had like, you know, happy crystal liquors, or you had the like, I'm sitting in the dark and summoning demons. And
I've got a new band name.
Crystal Liquors. Happy Crystal Liquors is it.
Yeah, I have the greatest story of my early getting in all this stuff. It did involve Crowley in a way. I was in Walden Books in our local mall, and Walden Books is this place that used to exist for people who don't know. They're gone with Borders, their parent company. And I was looking in the New Age section at different stuff, and there was one book by Crowley in there. I'll never forget it because of this experience. It was like his yoga book. And I just picked it up thinking, that's not Sylvia Browne. That's not Scott Cunningham. What's it say? And I'm just flipping through it thinking, I don't want this. And a guy walks up behind me, because in this Walden Books, you had the New Age section facing the Bibles and stuff.
Always.
Right?
Always. Like, I
so,
swear, like Concerned Mothers of America insisted that you
yeah.
had it there.
Yeah. So this guy walks up and he says, you know, he's got this big cross that he's wearing. He says, so you're interested in Mr. Crowley, huh? And I was like, I don't know. And he goes, are you aware that Crowley lived a life of sin, and the way he lived, he died a horrible death? Would you want to follow in that path like him? And I said, sir, are you Christian? And he said, yes. I said, are you aware that the person you worship died a horrible death? Are you looking to die like him? And that ended that discussion. Yeah.
Boy. Yeah, Walden Books was my gateway to actually my public school library actually had Sybil Leek and a bunch of other stuff in it in Middle Ohio in the 70s and 80s, and that was my first gateway into like all of the wild weird stuff. But Walden Books was the first place I bought my first tarot deck, and Francis Barrett's The Magus, because it was the first book on the shelves there that did again look like, I was like, this the whole Wiccan thing, I'm like, this isn't quite my thing. It seems neat, but also not my thing. And then like the Sylvia Browne and Shakti Gawain, some of the stuff was okay.
Oh, I forgot about that. What was creative visualization?
Yeah, creative visualization.
Oh yeah.
I'm a little jealous learning that my my wife's mom like knew Shakti, and like my wife got to meet her, and I was just like, okay, I would have had some questions there.
Yeah, I remember the look on the people working the counter at Walden's when we were, I don't know, weren't quite driving yet, so we had to be 15. We walked up to the counter and we're like, can we special order a book? And they said, yeah. We're like, we want something called the Necronomicon.
Okay.
And the lady goes, the what? We said, it's the Necronomicon. And she goes, well, hold on. She starts typing in the computer. She goes, it's a paperback. And we're like, great, it's cheap. You know?
Yeah, oh god, Simon's Necronomicon.
Yeah.
You know, that dude has the gall to pretend that thing's real too.
Oh man.
Still we'll double down on it. I'm like, dude, you just took a whole bunch of like Sumerian and Babylonian invocations and like melted them up to look like Lovecraft shat them out. Please sit down.
And I don't know who he is exactly, but he strikes me as the kind of guy that would walk into a wedding full of strangers, walk straight to the altar and be like, there's something very deadly and dangerous buried under this altar. You know? and then try to sell him his book. Yeah.
Hi, Kitty.
Okay, Rhea.
So
I'm
let's-
trying to give Rhea aversion therapy of like, fine, if you're going to be on camera, you get to say hello to everybody.
This is it. Exposure therapy. So let's talk about. So we don't often get this kind of combination of, someone who identifies as a heathen, and then we have a psychic vampire. Well, I mean, you're both magical practitioners, but different flavors. And then I think what people have been asking, like what they want to hear about, is how magic relates to the paranormal. Because I mean, it seems like, and this is one of the reasons people keep asking, I think, is the paranormal TV shows that are on network TV are so technology based most of the time. There's not a lot of room for ritual or magic or in the, in the investigation. Like it's just not used. They're not used as investigative tools. So whoever would like to go first, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. And everyone else apparently does too.
Well, I will jump in first and say what we call magic and what we call paranormal are two basically the same thing under different languages, like different labels. Magic is paranormal. It is measurably paranormal. So the stuff that people who are going ghost hunting are out there seeking, communication with spirits, the sense that energy lingers in spaces, that you can have some sort of impact on that energy. The know-how of how to do that and the interpretation of why, which will vary radically from tradition to tradition, that's the realm of the magical and occult communities. Is we are in it. We are part of it. It's part of us. Early on, one of the reasons why there was a division between the two is most magical practitioners don't need an EMF meter to tell them there's stuff that exists, because it's fundamental to their practice.
Yeah, I think that's something that you've mentioned to me before, Em, is the like we're skipping that step. We don't need necessarily. I mean, it's fun to watch it go off.
Well, the neat part, and we have moved to a point now where there's enough like intersection between them. And I think I just made a rude ASL sign. Ohio anyway.
Sorry about that.
Sorry, whoops. There's enough intersection between them now that we have people who are like, hey, what if I apply this technology to measure what people are doing when they run ritual? What if we take scrying and apply technology to scrying? Because that's in my opinion, that's the Estes method. The Estes method is scrying, but instead of using a bowl with water or a black mirror, you are using sensory deprivation coupled with the randomized static and sounds coming through. But it's the same headspace that the person gets into.
I think most shows are desperately trying to give evidence that the layman would accept. That inherently removes all magical concepts.
The problem with that is people who don't want to believe in anything are going to find reasons to tell you. Okay, not to get political, but if you look at the political landscape currently, and just sort of like the sort of culture war divisions, you can't convince anyone of anything they don't want to believe in. And you can't convince anyone to stop believing in something that they firmly believe in. So the idea that there is some holy grail of evidence that some television show out there could pull out, hold up and be like, hey, ghosts are real, moving on, or UFOs are real, or any of it, it would not matter. You could have somebody walk up to Bigfoot, take a selfie, have Bigfoot walk off, and like literally right there on camera, and everybody, like the people who want to believe in it would be like, that's real. And the people who don't, but also it's not just a choice. Something that I have observed in all of these years is we exist in a carefully constructed structure, our worldview, our Weltanschauung, the way in which we interpret reality. Some of us think of it as more a scientific mode, and some of us have a more mystical mode. Some of us, it's a Christian thing handed down to us, but it's this house built around us that keeps the elements of chaos and disorder and unknowing out. When the structure of that house is knocked down or called into question, the integrity of it is questioned, it is a traumatic event.
Mhm.
Initiation is that traumatic event harnessed to cause change, to actually like follow it to its conclusion of, if the foundation of my house is broken, how do I fix it?
Yeah.
But for your average person who does not want to indulge or can't, like just mentally is not in a place for initiatory experience, that is a traumatic event, and they will have one of two general responses to trauma. They will memory hole it. It just simply won't exist. Like 3 days later, that did not happen. You could not convince them to remember that it happened. Or they will become so violent at the idea, if you bring it up, like they will become violently opposed to it. It is evil, it is wrong, it is terrible, and they will just dig in and entrench themselves in what is their comfort reality. And I've watched that for decades at this point, and have just abandoned any sense that I could prove to anyone, actually abandoned the hubris that I could take my experiences as proof for somebody else.
Thank you, Leanne. So glad you guys are going to include this all in your documentary. Us in the paranormal field are so ready. Yes, we are also ready.
Okay, Lonnie, I want to hear your take on that too. Like I obviously have some feels.
Yeah, and I mean, I can agree with pretty much what you said. My personal theory on this is one that, you know, the world itself is imbued with magic. I don't make a separation between, you know, what people say, sorry, Fen, but the woo and the not woo, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, right within heathenry itself, you know, within the creation myths, we ended up with, you know, trees being the origins of humanity. So you've got that relationship with trees and a god giving you breath as spirit, and all the breath of humanity being shared as a way, as a gift from those gods. A god rips his eye out, hangs himself from a tree, bleeding to seek what? Wisdom, right? And living in a world where the stranger could be a god walking down the street, right? So, you know, we have those things already baked in. So for me, magic is something that's just imbued in the very nature of it all. With that said, I think some places are much more prone to liminality than others, you know, that sort of blending of worlds. So that's where I think paranormal phenomena is more likely to be encountered. And when I approach that magically, I'm looking at it as sort of an energy signature. Like, if I'm walking up on a place, let's say it's an abandoned farmhouse somewhere out that's not been inhabited for 50 years, and it's got that vibe, it's got that feel. Well, what makes it liminal? The first thing I'm looking for as a magic using person, as a heathen and a sorcerer, are there crows and ravens that inhabit that space very often? What kind of trees are around it? You know, like, how do the trees behave around it? Are they decaying? Are they more lively? Are there a lot of insects? Are, you know, like, what kind of wildlife is just around? And what is all the realm of nature doing around this area? Pay attention to the land spirits and what they're doing. Next thing I might want to do is make an offering to those land spirits. This is more magical thinking, and you know, clean water is always a safe bet, folks. And have some kind of divination tool handy. You know, a pendulum for simple yes/no indications, or tarot card, or Lenormand cards, or runes, or whatever you're into. I will say though that you must take every bit of divination in paranormal investigation, magical kind of things, with a grain of salt, because the minute you enter one of these tools into the practice, you have forced a narrative into your mind. It always has an answer, whether there's an answer or not. So be careful and take notes. You know, look for other avenues to corroborate things. So what are you going to do when you get into those limo spaces? We're talking about blending the realm of magic and the paranormal, right? Well, magicians are out there trying to contact spirits, like you were talking about. Well, here's a good place to do it. You've already got all that liminality inherent. But I think what's more beautiful about these kinds of things is it's kind of a wilder energy, it seems like, in the field. You know, the field being that whole collection of everything that was, is, and will be. So when you go into one of these really hyperliminal places, like a haunting or somewhere where there's a lot of paranormal phenomena, this is a great place to charge items with that kind of intense energy, to, do divination just to see what might come through and might contact, to go into light trance states and see what comes to mind, or just simply, my highest recommendation is to go into a place like that and sit in silence and just allow your body, like you're breathing through your pores, to notice what there is to notice on any level whatsoever. Another experiment that would be a lot of fun that I highly recommend you folks do is go into a place like that. And please don't be alone when you do this, because the scariest thing you're ever going to encounter in abandoned buildings are meth labs and broken boards and, poisonous spiders. So
Bats, rabid raccoons.
yeah. So make sure you have someone watching your back, but go into a place like this. And if you're into casting circles, and I advise trying one at least once, cast a circle and just sit in it. And then sit still, settle your senses, center yourself, however you like to do, and have a notebook handy and just kind of a light form of automatic writing. See if you can notice what starts getting curious about you in that circle and comes to the edge of it, and see what's there. This is what I think the beauty of paranormal places that we would call these more liminal places and being magic users is that they are what Jason Miller once called the Wild West, that you can really go here and test your skills and see what's really going on. That's my favorite thing about it.
Yeah. No,
yeah. Or go ahead. I mean, did you have something?
Oh no, I just the thing that frustrated me from the start, because working in paranormal reality TV was not on my checklist of things to do. It was a favor to Josh Light and Elfie Music, who were the non-Christians on a crew that was headed by someone who was basically cosplaying the Warrens. And very much was looking at everything from this very Catholic lens of everything out there is either ghostly grandma or probably a demon possessing somebody. And the thing is like that house that we live in, that's built up for us, by us, but society, religion, like everything kind of calcifies it around us. Everything that comes into it has to take a shape that fits in the house, or we reject it. Yeah. So when you have this, everything that we take with us into the field in terms of our expectations, the shape of how we think reality should be, automatically means that we will label things, like you said, based on what we expect them to be. And if we don't have the words for something, we're going to try to fit it in there. Sometimes, much like Cinderella's sisters, at the expense of cutting pieces off to just try to make it fit. And one of the things about the shows that we're working on is we're taking a group of people who have a lot of different backgrounds and a lot of different ways of interpreting reality, and in some ways just stripping away those boundaries to the best that we can, with full knowledge there's no way to fully strip them. But to allow for what is it really like, what are we experiencing, like in some cases just resisting the urge to put a label on it at all, because those labels are also little boxes that will start to exclude things. Just arguing with people 20 years ago on the idea that, like, have you considered that it's a land spirit, and watch like people go, what's that? Okay. And then of course having like the production company being like, that's too long of an explanation, our audience isn't going to understand, so let's just call it an elemental and move on.
Yeah. And I think we get into the area too. Like, I'll use Ashmore Estates as a location that's pretty famous. I live nearby, that a lot of people might know.
I got to, and holy crap, that place is weird.
It's weird, but for me, like, I think when you go to like one of these really liminal spaces, that you're getting an idea of, if you think of it like if the worlds are kind of intertwined, that right on that other side of the world, the other world, whatever you want to call it, astral realm, what have you, I call this kind of the shallows, because I don't think that we're quite there yet, that it takes on a more true form of whatever that energy signature is. Right. So Ashmore Estates, for example, I think has become so just clean and taken care of, which is fine. and toured so many times and so many tickets sold that I don't think any spirit you may encounter in the place is actually tied to that place. I think if you were to slip onto the other side, you would see a theater stage, and it's attracting those sorts of spirits to come put on a show.
So I have legit had to walk through places, and what I pick up, I'm like, I have to ask off camera, do they also use this place as a haunted attraction? Because I don't know that people realize that artists, creators, people who are embodying characters, like there's a lot of energy. There's magic in masking, in adopting a persona. And that creates a resonance, that creates imprints, that can create constructs, like constructed spirits that linger. So on more than a few occasions, I'm like, well, okay, so what's in this room is this sort of like textbook thing. It kind of looks like the butcher from Diablo, and I'm pretty sure it's not started out as a spirit. This is like a thing that people constructed, and they sort of have created this like scarecrow that they expect to see in this room. And like that, understanding that that's a principle of magic, that that's something that we can do willfully or accidentally, is really important, because so many of the haunted places, it's just us. Like we haunted it ourselves.
Well, to a degree, I think it can certainly start off that way, and I definitely think it goes along that spectrum in a lot of ways. But the animus part of me says that we may create that scarecrow, but in that same time, it's like we put a big sign above it that says job opening.
Yes. I'm
and something's going to come fill that hole.
Fill the role. Sometimes there's things where it's like, okay, there's just this little like echo. And sometimes there's the like, oh, here's a very convenient mask. You want me to look like this? Cool.
Yes.
You will pay attention. I look like this? Yay.
Yes.
Like that. And it helps for there to be those places of power, the soft spots, the crossings. There's something about that environment that is more fertile for things to be and to interact and to reach over and to be built. Elfie! Hello, Elfie. I was taking your name.
Hi, Elfie. This is why Crowley and actually early 19th century magic practitioners did theater as ritual. The two go hand. I've always said that, Elfie.
Florence Farr. If you do not know her name, look up Florence Farr.
If you listen to Jack Grail on anything he's been interviewed on, my show, his show, let's just listen to Jack Grail, and he's really into the PGM stuff, and he'll tell you like there is some sense to like masking yourself as something else to get something else to happen.
So I'm also a thespian, which is different from a lesbian. So I did a bunch of stuff in actual theater. And one of the things we did Oscar Wilde's Salome in community theater, and I got pulled in to play the executioner of John the Baptist because they needed, and I quote, a tall, imposing, dominatrix looking fallen angel. And my friends were like, we know somebody. So this is what I got to embody on stage. The hilarity was not at all lost on me. But so they were doing like the sort of like get the crew together and like get everybody on this thing to like feel, and they were talking about energy, and they were doing energy work on stage. And my friends are looking at me going like, this is the stuff you teach. And I'm like, yeah, it is. It's exactly like, it's not woo. Like this is, if you are a theater person,
but it is woo.
You know about the exchange that happens. If you are a performer, you know that there is a synergy that you set up between yourself, like that there is something that weaves together between people that you can, in fact, like embody, that you're drawing upon everybody else who's made that character. You're drawing upon. Magic is everywhere. We are magic. Obviously I get pretty into it. Somebody had asked a good question about how do you make a circle?
Yes, I wanted to go back. Lori. Yes, there you are, Lori. Yes, Lonnie, do you wanna start, and then we'll fill it in?
Circles aren't really my jam, but I can see the value in them, and I experiment with them. So there's so many ways to go about this. One of the easiest ways to do it is just simply visualize it creating itself, point at it, use a stick, a wand, whatever you're into, visualize some crackling blue-white energy fueling from you to the ground, and just go around in a circle and visualize it in your mind, seal it shut. In fact, I would suggest you experiment with different shapes whenever you're doing all this. See what really happens with different shapes to you mentally and to what happens out there. Now, you two, Fen and Michelle, might use circles as part of your practice a lot more than I would. So you might have a little bit better instruction than I'm giving.
I'm a little loosey-goosey on it. So I have done like full-on formal pagan casting a circle with a sword. It's why I had a broadsword in the back of my car through all of the Paranormal State episodes, because maybe I would have to cast a circle and do a ritual for a pagan family, because I was clergy of pagan families, where you have sometimes a fancy implement like literally a sword, and you draw a boundary, another boundary. And the idea, I think the most important thing is the theory behind it. You are creating a boundary within which your stuff happens, and within which what you are doing is protected and sheltered. And that boundary is creating a space that is betwixt and between. Everything that is outside is not allowed inside of that space. You have control over it. Think of it like magical walls. And the simplest thing to maintain shape-wise is just a circle around yourself. Everyone is casting a circle, whether they realize it or not, when they go through the grounding, centering, and shielding thing. Because you take a moment to find your ground and your foundation. You center your power. And then what do? You visualize an expanding ball of white light or fire. Like you create a boundary around yourself. You are casting a circle with that, technically speaking. A Wiccan might argue because you don't have the right tools, but it's the same concept. The core thing about a circle is making a space that feels defined and sheltered. That is your space that you have control over, that you can then focus toward whatever you're doing, and also keep things outside of that boundary that you don't want in.
Yeah, it's a container and a boundary. The container for the like ingredients of the working or the spell or whatever you like to call it, and then the boundary from the entities or energies that you don't want to hinder your magical.
Well, and the cool thing like that is like it can be for protection, but it can also be a container within which you now have created your own liminal space.
Yes, exactly.
Outside of the bounds. And that sacred space. And it's really more a sphere than it is a circle, like the circle visualization. Like you have your own little bubble of whatever you're doing that you can then concentrate the power, the energy, the intention, whatever it is.
There are concepts in heathenry where we will walk a flame around an area, and sort of address the land spirits and say, this is what we're doing this for. Or others might, use the Elder Futhark as an example and call out a rune ring around us just to delineate this is going to be sacred, magical, what have you space, but we're not creating a boundary except with the flame, which some people call it like land taking or land claiming. Like on a regular schedule, I used to walk a flame around my house, and then I had a falling out with a particular group out there, and a tree collided across my fence and crushed a trampoline and took out part of the garage. And so now I walk the block.
Well, it's interesting how sometimes things are presented as all or nothing. So when we talk about like casting a circle, like people cannot pass. And like, okay, so I went Cleveland had a pagan pride thing and would do a Beltane on the square pretty regularly. And whoever was hosting it the one year, like they were very, very into like you had to be like saged and cleared to come into the space. There was no crossing the boundary. Like it was just all or nothing. And like I said, I'm more loosey-goosey. I'm very like just my whole practice is about liminality and the betwixt and the between and walking those between spaces. So the purpose, at least for us, when we create space, is more creating a point that is centered focus for the group or the individual, but allows for movement back and forth. It's got a permeable barrier.
Mhm.
What you need it to do. I rarely encourage people to have it be so firm that you cut everything out, because I mean you're basically putting yourself in a bubble with no oxygen at that point.
Yeah.
You don't want to do that magically.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Lonnie.
I was going to say, in my own personal practice, I don't create any barrier or boundary whatsoever. In fact, I probably do the opposite, because I got this thing from Aiden Walker in a random video he did years ago and developed it into a much deeper practice out of it. And every single day, and when I go out to begin a practice before I do divination, you might think I'm Catholic because I do an equal armed cross across myself. But when I do it, I say, I stand at the crossroads and I am that. And then I go on about a little spiel that I have, and I finish it confirming that I am the crossroads, embodying and centering myself with all that I think of as that the crossroads kind of energy, that I am that I don't have to be somewhere for that to happen.
Yeah. I love that. And Leah, we're gonna answer that question in just one second. I do just want to echo sort of what you all said, and that I've been in covens where it was very strict, and there were 45 rules that we had to follow before we could do, and nobody could step out, and you had to go to the right and the left. And I think that is one way to do it. But especially for the person who's asking, or other people who might be curious, you are magic already. You are already have magic, or you is magic. You already did do it. So you don't need to have all the rules. If you like the rules and you want to learn them, go for it. But nothing, unless you like fully believe it with every rudiment of your being, nothing bad is going to happen to you if you don't follow the rules. I will say, I think that some people think that it has to be like exactly the same, and that every witch does it like this exact way. And it's just not true. It's just not.
I highly recommend, it's on the House Kept Rereading Lich. Wow, there's an interesting Freudian slip that I didn't expect. Rachel Pollack, the late Rachel Pollack, has a book called The Power of Ritual, which I think is one of the most widely accessible to multiple like belief frameworks of like what is ritual and ritualized action, because like circles are part of that. It's the concept of kind of creating a space separate from our ordinary space, which for me was like where the idea of casting a circle made sense. Was I am setting this space aside and kind of consecrating it to what I'm doing. And it is different from, now my living room is more than just my living room. It's elevated into someplace else.
It is a portal.
Because like it looks like we're I guess it looks like we probably are casting. Like, warriors go in and they make the foundation, and the counselors go in and they weave the connections, and the priests go in and finish the temple. But it's creating astral temple space. We stand in a circle because the energy flows better that way. I've tried a couple of different configurations, and it's just easier for it to go that way. Energy, kind of like, air and water in pipes, prefers a straight or slightly curved, like too many in it, and gets very complicated, or backed up. And that can be uncomfortable if you're part of the piping.
For many reasons. So, well, let's go back to, was it Lee? Did Lee have a question?
Yeah.
How often do you think you are communicating with aliens versus spirits or ghosts in this plane? Like on the show? Wonder if they mean on the show or in general.
I can do in general. You can do the show.
Yeah.
You go.
For me, this is a very, 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 very common kind of question that I encounter. The only thing I can tell you is that meditation is your friend here. Consistent practice of stillness, silence, and learning to discern the difference between your thoughts, intrusive desires from the subconscious, self-confirmation of what you really, really want, the Spice Girls thing. And
what you really, really want.
and getting the message perhaps from something that you're seeking, because at least from me, from a magical perspective, I don't ever go anywhere in this situation without a plan, without knowing what I'm getting myself into one way or another. So that practice that gives me the best chance at discernment. I'm not saying I'm perfect. I'm just saying I've got a better chance at discernment than not. I can hopefully make the difference between knowing that I'm contacting what I intended, or recognizing the signature in the energy of what I'm communicating with somehow, versus wondering what could that possibly be.
I will echo objectivity and cultivating like a good critical thinking and applying that to our experiences is essential if you want to get into this, because it is so easy. There's a lot of folks who are psychics who I don't think they're faking. I'm going to dog on her. Lorraine Warren. I worked with Lorraine Warren. I do think that she had skills. And also I think she had such a rigid worldview that she often didn't allow for the possibility that she might be interpreting things wrong. And if you're working in this space, so for me, when we're talking, I'm going to go back to Picasso.
Whoa, throwback.
Abandon the sense that any of those labels mean anything beyond useful, like little boxes that we've sort of culturally constructed to try to make sense out of a universe that is so incomprehensibly vast that we must create artificial boundaries for these little finite things to make any sense of them at all.
Yeah.
So for me, when you're asking, like, is it an alien? Is it a ghost? Is it a spirit? The only ones that I'm usually reasonably certain about in terms of the taxonomy of the paranormal would be human spirits, the recently deceased human, because they carry so much, so obviously, of who they were and what they were. But let me be clear, just because somebody was in a human-shaped incarnation most recently does not mean that I think that they specifically aren't also something else.
Mm-hmm.
It's just what they were most recent is what sticks with them. And so the easiest way to have a conversation about them is to call them a human ghost.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's exactly what I was going to say. And I was just going to say that, the factions are really funny because we've just created them. And, we talk about this a lot, like cryptid people only like cryptids and ghosts and and it's like, well, but do we know jack shit about any of them? And
it's like, what do we mean by alien? I end up having this conversation a lot because, like, what do you mean by the word that you're using? Because it's going to vary from person to person, tradition to tradition, time to time. Like we're talking about LGBTQIA, quilt bag, queer, like what words are okay? Words and our labels change. And actually they must. They evolve, they change over time. There are cultural and temporal, personal and psychological reasons why the linguistics shift. So my first thing is if somebody says they've encountered an alien, you have to ask that person why do they think it's an alien? What does alien mean to them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And if I'm saying alien, it's most important, what does that mean to me?
Yeah. I think that's a super important distinction. I know another question popped up about, I think it is, we're like a little bit over here, but I would like to just say real quick, as somebody who, Leonie, who has ADD or ADHD and is neurodivergent, I have loads of tips and tricks. One that is really accessible is listening to a guided meditation, like having something that's a sound that you can also follow, whether that's like a light music in the background. There's an app called One Giant Mind that has really nice music and then like a beginning human talking and then closing. Also breath work is extremely helpful. So any kind of like pranayama is another term for it. You might have heard that before. But any type of like focused breath work, like even if you're just doing a very simple, like, where you're focusing, that's like calming your nervous system. Also, yoga is made to essentially prep the body for meditation. So getting into your body and like out of your mind, because mine is always like too. Those are my favorite. I mean, I should probably do like a podcast on this because I could talk about it forever. Yeah,
yes, you should.
Great question.
No, I mean, first I say, absolute stillness is a lie. Like if you're absolutely still, you're dead, and even then,
Right.
there's still stuff going on the cellular level. So it's not. I'm modeling the fact that like I'm sitting here shuffling a deck of cards the entire time that we're talking. I always have something like this little guy, like there's some fidget thing for I'm focusing on something, and I don't expect the rest of my body to be still for all of that. So it is really helpful to know like what are your limits, what does your body like to do, how does your mind tend to work. Is there an activity where you get so immersed? Because ADHD is known for hyperfocus.
Yes.
What helps you hyperfocus?
What helps you hyperfocus? Exactly.
Because,
like use your superpower. Your superpower is that you can hyperfocus. The thing that sucks is that you can't focus. You're hyperfocusing.
but
So,
what helps you hyperfocus? Because that space is what a lot of people are like aiming for when they're trying to get like my stillness of mind, my focus of mind. Don't hold yourself up to an unachievable goal. Try to just be as much present in the moment as possible, as comfortable in your skin as possible. And if distractions come up, what I usually tell people, and most of the therapists are going to tell you the same thing, acknowledge it and just like let it be over here. Like it's still there. You can come back to it, but like just make a conscious effort to be like, but I'm paying attention to this right now.
Yeah.
Don't try to like, yeet it or fight it. Fighting it actually gives it more attention.
Mm-hmm.
Just be like, nope, background noise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is a neuroscientist out of Stanford, Dr. Andrew Huberman, who shares an immense amount of discoveries and insights and tools and techniques to help people with ADHD, depression, anxiety, and he does it all free right on YouTube. So please go check him out.
Yes, he's the bomb.
Awesome.
Somebody else said walking meditation, which is excellent also. And we are like way over now. And I just want to say, again, thank you to everyone who has supported the Kickstarter for these 2 queer paranormal shows that are super weird and cool. And we can't wait to bring them to you. And just remember, if you haven't pledged on Kickstarter and you want to, you can just type in new blood into Kickstarter, and we're the only new blood in there. So it'll come right up. And we have loads of rewards. We have like magically infused planchettes and
cool t-shirts, wonderful art,
very
pins.
cool.
At a certain tier, you get some of the whiskers from my cats.
Yes, you do.
Humanely shed, which I was saving for a friend who crafts magical wands and stuff out of them.
Yes.
The thing is we've got Lonnie on here, and the whole point is because Lonnie does a hypnotherapy session with me.
Mm-hmm.
Not even like touch on that. The funny thing, it does touch on magical taxonomy and what do words mean, because there's a couple of words I have made a point of avoiding almost all of my practice, and yet not, because I flirt with it. And I mean, if you like take all of my works and my music and my books and you sort of like put them on a table, you can just, it looks like a conspiracy board. You'll just see the same words come up. And see, like with identity and meaning, like over and over and over again.
Yes. Nice. And go ahead.
What I did want to like just formally like apologize with you, Lonnie, was just the necessity for kind of keeping you in the dark for like what we were trying to even accomplish, where I was just like, okay, I know the potential problems with hypnosis for past life memory is it's easy to lead into stuff. And so like we brought you in with as much sight unseen as possible, and then like maybe 3 or 4 like prompt words. And I remember you like furiously Googling this stuff, and I'm like, you're not going to find it. Like, it is totally like our own little thing. Like, I have kept that stuff as far off the internet as possible. And it was, God, that was just a raw, revealing, like, oof.
Gnarly.
I'll be perfectly honest. I have moments where I'm like, oh, that's on film.
Yes.
Oh, boy. Well, guess
And
what?
if you want to see it, folks,
Oh, boy.
our Kickstarter, if you want to see Michelle Belanger be hypnotized by Lonnie Scott, hey.
Yeah.
No, and Lonnie, you are amazing, and you will, always be somebody that we want to work with when we're doing weird experiments. If you'll
thank you.
So
Yeah, thank you. I'm absolutely always game to help any way I can, whether it's on film or not, doesn't matter. And I did want to remind people, in case you haven't seen anything that I said on Facebook, and I do mean it, you donate $600 or more to this Kickstarter campaign, send me a screenshot to my email address. Use weirdwebradio@gmail.com. That's easy. Or you can go to weirdwebradio.com, hit the contact form, send it to me that way. I will give you 1 free hypnosis session for what you like, and I'll give you 3 free tarot readings on top of that. But $600 or more, send me proof.
I want that. I have to donate my own camping. All right. Thank you so much, Lonnie. That's incredibly generous of you. And I hope some folks take you up on that.
We shall see.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We love you. I'll see you in a day or two.
In a day or two.
That Oren, in fact.
Oh, yes, Matt.
Awesome. Matt is my brother from another mother. I love Matt.
Yes, that's right.
And then we're also on the House Kepru Gather train, because our annual thing that's been going on for 23 years is this coming weekend. And so
stuff.
Yeah, we've got virtual tickets. So if people can't like last minute come out to Ohio, you can come and see what it is we do for all of Saturday. If you can't make it to like actually sit in front of your computer for Saturday, it's a link to the classes for that, and you can just whatever.
You should do that. Also, I'm going to be teaching a very short, well, it's kind of like a workshop about feminism and the paranormal, and also talking a little bit about the show as well. So I'll be there. You'll have one other familiar face. So yeah, there's lots of shit going on this week. You're going to see us a lot.
Yep, it's a lot.
All right, are we saying goodbye for real? Goodbye for real.
Talking for another 45 minutes, but I also really wouldn't mind going to go like play Diablo 4 for a little while. The gamer in me just like needs some decompression. That is definitely like one of my hyper focused places.
I think we're still live.
I think we're still alive. And if we are, I just want to say, stay weird out there, my friends.
Yes.
Stay weird.